Hi, I'm finally ready to start decorating our Christmas Carol album that we started. And this was the original that I'm taking this off of. So I decided I was going to go ahead and use a different paper by Bo Bunny, the Bo Bunny, can't remember, the sled one. But I had so many requests to do it with the Christmas Carol paper. So I'm going to go ahead and decorate the album that we did in the tutorial, which, as you can see, is smaller than this original one. And I'm stuck because of the magnet. So it's a little bit smaller, not a lot, but it is the magnets running to catch each other. So we're going to go ahead and do the same decorating, so I'll be referring back and forth to the book. So page 1. Now, what I'm going to do with you is we'll go ahead and map the pages, because I know I have a lot of new beginners that wanted to see how I map the pages. We'll mount the pages. I'll do a little bit of the decorating so that you can see, but then I put my pages in and I go back and do my final decorating to see what I want to add depending on the, how much room is still in the gussets. This is how I learned over the years to not overextend my album, to do the final decorating at the very end, and if there's a lot of room left, then we can go ahead and add more. So for this page 1 was the envelope that we made. And for this one, you're going to need the seasonal sentiment paper and also the Yuletide greetings paper. All right, I closed Facebook, turned my phone volume down so we won't be interrupted, and now we can continue. So for our first page, and like I've mentioned in my other videos, and I had some questions about the cutter that I used, so I'm going to show you this cutter. And I've picked it up. So this cutter is over, let's see, 35 inches long. It's huge. But this cutter has a blade in it that is self-sharpening because it runs itself against a metal bar. So I don't have to ever change the blades, which just the savings on that alone has been tremendous. And it's 31 inches long. And it is heavy, so that's the cutter I use. That's why you don't see it a lot in the video. I only use my small Fiskars cutter if I'm cutting small items. So that's why I have to come in and out of the picture sometimes. And it cuts a lot straighter than the Fiskars, let me tell you. And it cuts my chipboard. So for the back of our page then, we're going to start out, it's 6 inches wide is what we made. And it's by 7.5 long. So that's a nice size album. So you're going to need to cut your first paper. Now if you're cutting your paper out of a 12 by 12, look at your orientation. So you are looking at an album this way, facing me. So you want the main picture to be facing. You don't want it to be sideways. Maybe you do, but so we're going to cut it. Now my page is 6 inches and I want to have that little bit of a border around the top. So I'm actually going to cut it at 6 7/8 wide. Sorry, no, 5 7/8 wide. And because we're 7.5 long, but we again want that border, so you're going to take 1/8 of an inch off the length. Okay, now make sure we have this facing the right way, because when we turn it over, we want the pocket to open. Then I'm going to just line everything up. And, it depends on what kind of a look you want. If you want to put a solid paper behind this one, you would actually cut this again another 1/8 of an inch short. So your maybe red would show. I don't do that a lot because it does make for a really heavy page when you're using a nice quality cardstock. But I do like to ink my edges. And I love my Tim Holtz dauber here. We're just going to go along the edges. And there's no right way, there's no wrong way. It just depends on the look you want to give your paper. But see, it does give a nice finish to your edges. I mean, you can even get a little bit more on the page if you want to really antique it. And then one thing you'll notice as I'm matting, I do use my 1/4 inch or my 1/8 of an inch score tape. I don't use a lot of extra different adhesives. I found that buying wet glue, buying score tape, buying red line, I tried them all. Trust me, you're spending more money. Just stick with one that works well for you and then use it. I just stick one in the middle because I like to make sure it lays nice and flat. If you're using glue, you're going to want to be extremely light on the glue. Glue will saturate your paper no matter which glue it is, and it's going to pucker or wrinkle a little bit if you get it too wet. So I'm going to just do some lining up here. And then I just like to take my bone folder, make sure that score tape's down. Now, we had two things here. We had a girl that I fussy cut, and she went right here. And then I also did a ribbon. I'm going to show you how to do the ribbon because fussy cutting is pretty much self-explanatory. And to be honest with you, I've accidentally thrown my scissors, I think, in the garbage. My fussy cutting scissors, and I have to find them. So I just go around the edges. You don't have to be perfect because then you're going to ink it. And then I just put it down at the bottom. And I only put adhesive on the bottom part so that we can stick a tag in there. But let's go ahead and make this ribbon so that you can see how I do this. And if you can see, it has dimension to it. Hopefully you can see. And it really adds to the page. So for that one, we are going to take, we've got a couple picks. You've got on your Scrooge and Marley, then we have this here at the bottom that can be cut. And I think I actually took that other one off of another page, but they both work. They're both great. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that off the bottom. And then I am going to go ahead and ink these edges. And I just leave it the full length until we get to the end. You don't really want to cut it because you don't know how much you're going to ruffle. And if you don't want to use paper, of course you could use ribbon. Okay, this is where I use the hot glue gun, and I will use a hot glue gun when it's paper to paper. And I'm just looking to see that the orientation's correct. What I'm going to do is put some hot glue on the end, and I'm going to just start it right where the paper starts. And then here we're going to use our finger. I'm just going to kind of ruffle it up. Now I'm just going to put a dab of glue, and it doesn't really matter where, but you want to just give a little push with your finger and bubble it up there in that hot glue. And I'm just picking another spot, and I'm going to ruffle it up there again just until it sticks into the glue. And once again, and you can kind of move it around. You can take, if you have a pick, if you want to round them off a little bit, you can also flatten them more accordion wise. Now if your paper is a little stiff, I like to go ahead and break it up a little bit as we're going. Pick another spot. And you'll know when you get there because it'll feel warm. Just pick another. I'm just going to push it again. And if you're using a wet glue or glossy accents, of course this will take just a little bit longer, because you do want to hold it there until it dries. And it took me a while to get used to using my glue gun on my paper crafts. But once I was comfortable, now it's my go-to for everything. Buttons, chipboards. Like I said, paper on paper, it works really great. Metal, things like that, you'll probably want to go to your Glossy Accents or your E6000. Okay, now we're getting kind of towards the end. So I'm going to push it up. I'm going to just mark approximately where my end is supposed to be. And I'm just going to cut it straight across, or hope I cut it straight across. And then I'm just going to put the hot glue on this final part right there, maybe just a hair down to give it a little dimension. Then I'm just going to push. And there you have a ruffly border. Now inside the border too, you could put pearl accents if you wanted in between all of these, or snowflakes if you have some little snowflakes, and clean off all those glue edges. And there you have that ruffly border that I have on. Now one other thing that I do have on this one, and so if you want, you can use a chipboard if you have the chipboards, or you can even cut out a few of these stamps and you can layer them onto chipboard or cardstock. And then I used it as a stopper so that my pages wouldn't flop over, or my tags. And then you can see how she was fussy cut. And you can back it or you can just leave it. So there's that page. And now when we turn the page, this is one of the tags and pockets with the collection. And if you don't have the tags and pockets, but you have an envelope, the envelope punch, you could make a small envelope that goes here. And this is one of the chipboards. So we're going to go ahead and just do this top half, the back side, and I did not line this part. You can do that if you'd like. So we're going to grab our Yuletide greetings, and for this flat, I'm not going to cut the edges on this one. I'm going to leave these square, and you can go ahead and do your corners if you'd like. And so we're going to need about a 2.5 by 7.5 of this one. It's the only thing with my huge cutter, sometimes it's a little tricky getting the smaller cuts when I'm filming. So I'm going to cut it 1/8 of an inch shorter. And I'm going to do the same with the length, but on this bigger cutter. Make sure everything is going to fit the way I like it. Looks good. So now we're going to cut another 2.5 piece from this side. Well, you cut the same side, just and we have to cut this piece. And when you're measuring this piece, remember to go all the way up here. We still need this full length of 6, and we'll cut that with the envelope punch. So we're going to cut a 6 by 7.5 inch piece. Well, I'm cutting 5 7/8. I'm going to make sure we're all right here. Now, this is the tricky part, is cutting this. When we punched it, I believe we punched it at about, because we have to allow for that 1/2 inch, at 1 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to cut it 5 7/8. Wide. What did I do there? Nope. I actually cut it at about 7 1/2. And what I'm going to do is just line this up. So I'm going to punch this piece first to make sure it fits, because it's been a while since we made this. And I don't want to mess up my pattern paper. And once again, we had the 1/2 inch. I do believe we punched it at 1 1/2 originally, but because we want to have a little bit of a border, I'm going to go ahead and punch at 1 3/8. And I'm not going to worry about cutting this out, because what I'm doing is I'm trying to just line up right here and right here, and it looks good. So we are safe. Now I'm just going to set this piece aside. Envelope punch board, and then our pattern paper, and we're going to cut it at 1 3/8. We're going to punch it at 1 3/8. And let me get my box cutter. Line this up. I just go down to where it dips, just like when we made the page. I'm going to hold this firm and cut that away. Sometimes you'll notice there'll be a little bump there, so I check for that. And I need to see if there's any adjustments. Now sometimes when I do these, I'll notice that I'm going to be off a little bit, and actually this side is going into the hinge, so it should be all right. But when it comes time, after I've put it in the hinge, if it still looks a little off, then you can always put a border there, or you could really do some cutouts and make your own little border. But I'm going to double check, because this does look like it's off just a hair. And that looks a lot better. So I must have moved it while I was cutting it. So then we have this piece that will go on the top. And then I'm going to cut the other inside piece. And it will just sit nicely inside there. And then if you want to go ahead and do the inside here, just cut another piece, probably the same length, And you're going to just line the opening of it, making sure to keep it away from where you want your, there you go, fold to come. Now, when I do inside pockets like this, I will use a wet adhesive because you'll never get it down, or if you do, you're lucky with score tape because it will stick everywhere. So if you like that look better than leaving it plain, go ahead and cut another, or however you want it to look, another probably 2.5 inch piece, and you can slide it right in there. So we have all of our pieces cut. We'll go ahead and ink our edges. Really want to give some variation to this where it's such an old vintage remake paper. Want it to look like it has been sitting around a little bit. And if you really want to give it that old look, I've taken it and literally just crumpled my paper up, smoothed it out really nice, did some inking, and it went into the cracks and crevices. Really makes your paper look like it's old and worn. And I'll do a video on that one time, sometime, so that you can see how to really get that aged crackle look. Okay, now we're going to go ahead with our adhesive. You know, when I do cutouts like this, I will look also to make sure which one do I want to be on my front. And I want this one because it has the Christmas Carol, the word right there. I'm just going to go ahead and go around these edges. And I used to use an ATG gun until my pages started coming apart and until we started fighting. So the ATG gun went out the window, and then I realized how much I was spending on that stuff. I thought, no, we'll just stick with one thing. And I'm really thrilled with this paper. It's going to be an awesome Christmas paper. I did a craft fair this weekend, and the albums and the cards I made with this was the first things to sell. So that was a good confirmation that it's going to be a really good selling paper. Okay, now remember, you should have already had tape over that. Let's do some lining up. Stand up here. And when I did my other album, actually the cream color, I didn't go ahead and fill that in, but I think I'm going to. So let me just cut another piece. And even though this still has it on there, it's not going to hurt anything if you put it down in. You can cut it off if you'd like, because really nobody will see it. And if I was keeping it, I probably would not cut it off. I'm not going to just, for the sake of somebody else might not want to see it. But with this craft cardstock, it's a little more of a, what's the word? A difference that I don't think I want it to show as much. So we're going to go ahead and put that down in. And I'm only going to worry about doing the 3 sides. Now for wet glue, I actually use a glue of my own, and it hasn't come out yet because I've actually been trying it. I signed up with the company to get our own glue made because I had certain specifications. So I do have some of my design team trying this out. And if everybody loves it as much as they have been so far, then we will offer it for sale. And the nice thing is you'll be able to get the bottle and a huge 6-ounce bottle of glue along with that refill bottle for only $4, I believe. So it will be a huge savings, and it does dry quick. So you still have to work pretty fast with it. Get out a paper towel. Give a few pushes down on the inside. It's already dry, set, and that gives it a nice contrast. So we're going to close that up and cover our front, our flap. I still wouldn't use the glue on the whole album. That's just my personal choice. And that is down. Now when we go back, or when you go back, you can decide what do you want here. I used one of the buttons from the chipboard collection, and this is where I made that. I used the tags and pocket, or you can make your own little envelope with the envelope punch board. And there we have our page 1 all matted. We'll set that aside because it'll go into the album last. So our next page that you made was the flap that has the belly band. And then we had another whole nice sheet, and then this is a chipboard, and it's only hot glued on that little edge so that you can put a tag there. And this piece, so I'll get that punch out, is a nice big tag, and I just punch the top, and then we'll go on to the back. So you're going to need to find the red papers, and then we're going to use some more of the green, so you should have still quite a bit of that left. So we'll use the red, and then as you can see the back, let's see, we use that on the belly band, yes. And we also use the red snowflakes. Okay. This might be hard for some of you, so it's up to you. I used the red snowflakes. Yes, it's the back side of this. So if you are having trouble cutting your cover sheets, I totally understand. Go ahead and maybe use this and this, but I'll go ahead with my snowflakes. Now, when we made this, if you remember, we had our belly band all made, but we were going to wrap it. So we're going to start with this piece, and it is 4 inches by the 7.5 long. But again, you want to leave room for your border. Oh, and remember your orientation. So make sure you cut your 4 inches from here, and then your length across, so that you have your houses going up and down. So I'm going to cut it at 3 7/8. And of course we have the 7.5 long, but take off that 1/8 of an inch. And it looks like I did use the envelope punch board for my corners. So now I have to look, make sure I'm doing the right edge. So I need to do this one and this one. And the way we did that was we put it inside just to that metal, just so it overlapped it, and punch. Turn it over and punch. Now we have our matching edges. And that looks good. But we have our belly band. So our belly band is going to be wrapped on our page. So go ahead and decide where on the page you want your belly band. Do you want it towards the top? Do you want to bring it down so that you see some of the words? You know, if you even think your belly band's too wide, you can cut it. And actually, you know what? I think I'm going to take about 1 inch off. I know the other one was this wide, but being that this is a smaller book, I'm just going to cut 1 inch off. And see this little piece? Keep a hold of it. You don't know. You might find somewhere in your book that you want it. And then it already has your score tape. So I like that much better. So after I see where I want it, I like it there, turn it over, keep your fingers down on the page so it doesn't move. Remove your tape. There are 100 ways to do belly bands, so this is just one of the many ways. You can set it on top of the paper, but I like to have these pieces in the back. So that's what that will look like. Now, I probably should have inked it first, but if you didn't, that's okay too. Now we're going to score tape. And I have found that when I make all my pages, mat my pages, I actually can get a book put together and matted in 4 hours. It doesn't take me as long. It seems like I used to do one page, totally decorate it, do the backside, and I'll tell you what, it doubled my time. So for me, I open this when I go to put this down. This time I'm not going to, it's not cooperating. And sometimes it's hard to see the variations between when you're working with all the same color. So I'll throw a piece of paper behind there. Especially if you're doing black. It's hard sometimes to see those flaps where they begin and end. Keep my 2 fingers back there just to keep things from there going down until I'm ready. Okay, now let's go ahead and mat our belly band, and since I did cut it, so it looks like about 1 3/4, a little short. Just gonna double check to make sure that I don't waste any paper. It was 1 3/4, so I'll bring it up about 1/8 of an inch. Awesome. Now we're going to cut this at 3 7/8. So that it just fits inside there. And I use the Tim Holtz inks on everything. Now, on the front, we're going to want a stopper. So when we put the tag in there, it won't come all the way through. What I use for my stopper was this sign. You can stamp it, or you can cut it if you want. I'm going to still go ahead and cut. And I'll show you what I'm going to do first, because I need to make it a little bit stronger. Set that aside, and we should have plenty of scrap paper. And because, let's see, maybe I do. There it is. It's going to have to use the cream color. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and use the wet adhesive. Just sparingly. It doesn't matter where you put that on there. Just have to wait for it to dry for a moment. Go ahead and cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut my sign out. It's a lot easier with my smaller scissors. And when I take the garbage out tonight, I'll start digging through, because I have a feeling I threw them away. Now it's up to you. I did not go into the intricacies of cutting out the top part of the sign, because I want that flat surface to actually hold my tag. See, using glue, you can kind of feel where I'm coming up just a little. Okay. And there's our sign, nice and heavy. And inking your edges is great because it camouflages any imperfections that you see. And I want this to be right down in the bottom, just about in the middle of the page. And I don't measure, but you don't want a lot of glue. You just want a little bit on the bottom. Then you're going to eyeball it. Nice thing with using hot glue, if you're comfortable with it, you don't ever have to worry about your tags getting stuck. So let's just try this. So when we make our tag now, it'll sit in there and it won't fall through our page. And you can make a tag, you can make a booklet, you can make, gosh, anything you want. And for this, I had just made a tag out of the paper, and then I did stamp it, and I used one of the stamp sets that come with, well, they're extra. You can buy with the paper, and it had the little things up in the corner, and that's not the one. It's not the one. That's from my other. When we get them out, I'll have to show you. It's just a little thing, and I just used my Tim Holtz, the vintage photo that I used to go around the edges. And then this is one of the chipboards, and I just glued it at the top to give it a finished look, and then it sits right inside. So that's there, and that's all ready. So when we open it up now, oh, you'll need your stripe page. So I put this one on the inside here. So we're going to cut this one at 4. Well, 3 7/8. And then the length of the book. And we'll need the punch board. And again, just line it up to where the edge meets actually the inside of this little piece. Match that up. We'll go ahead and ink our edges. And once again, you don't have to decorate it the way I'm decorating it, of course. This is just to give you an idea, or how I mat. And by now you might be really bored, so you'll probably just move on and mat your pages. Okay, now we're going to line. Oh, don't forget to take the score tape off. You're a magnet if you did put a piece down. And now our inside was the red polka dots. And like I said, I know some of you might be having a heart attack right now, and I apologize. I totally feel for you. I understand. I had a hard time in the beginning cutting my graphic 45. I call that my main page. So here we have the 5-inch pocket. So let's cut it at 4 7/8. One secret though, when I am cutting this, I do look at for things like my little cutouts. And oh, this is where I had cut out my ruffle for my other page. So I look at it and I say, oh, well, I want to make sure I have those, because you can use this for a lot more. You might want to cut out Tim, Tiny Tim there with his father. So, and you might want these flowers. So make sure you cut over on this side, if that helps any with the fear factor of cutting it. And 7 1/2, so we're going to cut that off. Now, some reason I'm getting off for, I'm pulling my paper back before I'm done cutting. Yeah, it's a little off. Sure we're not too close to that fold. That'll be good. Now, because every album, no matter what we put together, sometimes there's little spots that are off because we're human. The way we cut, measure that straight, but I think it's the polka dots. To me, they look crooked, but they're not. I don't cut my tags until, let me show you on this one, because we're going to be, that's got to go into the hinge where that tag's going to go, and the hinge is going to sit up inside there about 1/2 inch. So I'm not going to actually cut that tag. That's part of my last part of decorating. If you cut it now, it may not be, you know, the right length. You don't know that hinge is going to be there, so it's really just best to do it towards the end after you've put your page on the hinges. Unless you're extremely confident, you can go ahead and cut that tag, but I won't be doing it right now because of that reason. That hinge will be there, and trust me, I will mess that up. Okay, make sure if you have that tape down. Now, if you don't remove it, it's no big deal. That's kind of why I put the tape in the middle. It's not like the end of the world. It won't come apart. No one will even know. And these polka dots are just giving my eyes trouble tonight. It looks like I am going to be off for some reason, and that's actually not a problem. Guess it's not. Might be a little bit off up here, so I probably, during the decorating phase, I'll cut a little strip of a border or something. No one will ever know but me and you that it was crooked. And then for the inside, I did do a covering with what we used over here, so the page is kind of tied together. So you will need this one, and can't find where mine went. There it is. So how I do the inside of my pockets is I just take my ruler and I just put it in about 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So I put my finger there to kind of mark. And I really like it to be more of an even number, like 3, 3.5. So I'm just going to cut it 3.5. Or yeah, I am going to do 3.5. I'm not going to take 1/8 of an inch off. And then I'm going to do the 7.5. You can go shorter if you want. And then again, check the orientation of your paper, how you want it to look when it's sitting inside there. Now on the length, I will take that 1/8 of an inch off. So it should slide right down. Now this is a bigger pocket, so I am going to use score tape on this. And I'm only going to do the 3 sides though. Don't worry about the bottom. Now if you do worry about the bottom, you could put a small piece, but I've never had any problem. Excuse me. Now I'm going to hold the pocket open until I get it somewhat settled. Now, if you're not comfortable with the score tape doing this, because it does grab fast, you still have to line it up. I keep my hand back there, and I'm actually pushing up on it so the score tape won't become too permanent. We're going to be off. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're using any other paper, because I've used tons of paper, you're not going to be able to bring your paper up like you can on this Carta Bella. This Carta Bella is a quality paper. It has a nice finish to it. So you have a little bit of texture and smoothness there, so you're able to grab that score tape, which I really like. Okay, just reach in, make sure everything's down. And as you notice, it will be it's down, even though we didn't put score tape on that bottom. So there's that page. Now this one, we're going to use the green. And this is one of the tags and pockets. There are some on your cutout sheet also. So you can either use, not tags and pockets, ephemera. And I backed it on cardstock, and then I only adhered it half of the way. And then this inside actually was that main page. Now, because we're using a smaller album than this one, I'm going to look at this first because we're only using a 6-inch page. And I'm not sure, to be honest with you, if I want to use it because we're going to have to cut it down so much. But let's take a look. So you're going to have to, I think what I'm going to do, and if you have an 8-inch sheet, let me grab that. Because this is a smaller album, and if you're still wanting that same effect inside, then yeah, we're going to have to go with our 6.5. Our 8.5. But we are going to have to cut down the sides, as you can see. And I'm going to use my small cutter so I can kind of show you how I do that. So we're going to cut the top off. So we know that this is 8. And we know that this is 6 on the inside. We don't want an 8-inch piece, of course. We want 5 7/8. So we're going to have to cut off a little over 2 inches. So I'm going to look at it. We're going to cut 1 inch from each side. And I want to see where it's going to land. So here we go. So I'm going to take a 1/16 of an inch, 1 1/16. I'm going to cut that off. And I will be using that for a border. Wow, I screwed that up, didn't I? Okay guys, why didn't somebody stop me? You know what? I gave you wrong measurements on this one. I I'm so sorry. Our pocket was 6 inches. Now we've moved on to the 7-inch because this is the bigger page. I apologize. It's been a while since we were making. Hope you didn't cut anything. If you did, you call me or message me and I will send you some more paper. So I feel terrible. I hope you didn't just ruin one of your cover sheets. So I'm going to remove this, remeasure. That's right. Now our pages got bigger. Our first one with the pocket was smaller. So we've got 7 inches. So we only need to take an inch. Just even that out. So I need to take a 1/2 of an inch. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm only going to take 1/2 of an inch to start with on each side. Now we have more of our picture intact. And voila, that fits pretty good. I think I'm going to take, I'm going to need to take another 1/16 of an inch off. And I'm going to do this little by little. Okay, now I know this page is 7.5. Okay. This is 8. So because I have more of a green border than up here because I did cut it when I tore it wrong. So I'm going to take, just to begin with, I may need to take that other 1/16 of an inch off. But I'm going to look at it first because then I'll take it from the top to even things out. Of course, I'm not holding it completely straight. I'm going to make sure, no, things aren't going to close. So I'm going to take 1/16 of an inch off this side. Once I get it in there laid straight, it'll be just fine. That looks great. We'll have our center. Yep, it'll close up nicely. We're going to set this aside. And we're going to need to make our side pockets. So, oh, we have our side pockets. I mean, we're going to have to line them. So what I used was, actually, I had used the rest of, let me show you. When I cut the other one, I had used these. And actually, it blended in. See how it made it look like it was one continuous? But we won't need to do that. Now, if you're going to cut your 12 by 12 piece to fit, then you will have these little side pieces left, and you can use those to line your pocket with. But I think that I'm going to go ahead and use, I'm going to use these stripes to line my little pockets with. And for the inside, now I just used a green cardstock. And you can use a green, you can use a red, you can use any color you want, or you can use your pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one to the 2.5. Let's make sure. A little bit off that edge. add another piece. And you know what, this pocket actually is a little bit smaller, as I recall, now that I've already cut my paper. I'm not being a very good example at measuring and then cutting tonight, and I apologize. We made the album and the cover, and then I stepped away from it for a while, getting ready for this last craft fair, and I completely lost some of my dimensions here in my head. Stripes just are playing with my eyes tonight. Okay, recording stopped. It said I reached my maximum limit. So what I was doing was I was showing you that after we had cut these two, you can line the inside of your pocket. I used a solid green on the last album, but I think I'm going to go ahead and use our little dancing people. And I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. Things are just still looking crooked. That just looks crooked to me. Sorry, don't mean to keep going back and forth on that. Oh, it's driving me crazy. Okay, so I measured the inside of my pockets, and both of them I'm going to cut a 3-inch piece. This one I'm going to do 2.5 on my short side, 3 inches on my long side. And that's what I'm doing right now. And if that's too much pattern for you, then go ahead and use a solid red. You could use a solid cream color or the green. So we're going to put that one in. And I'll need to cut another piece. And that one's going to be my 2.5-inch piece. And this one will go. Go this way so I don't have anything upside down. And I know I mentioned that you can go all the way to the bottom if you like. I don't. Saves a little bit on paper. Then we'll have our stripes. And then we will have our center. All right, let's get everything in. Okay, what I did is I stopped the camera because I can't really speed this one up yet, so that you didn't have to sit here and watch me putting score tape on everything. So everything now has been score taped, and we're going to go ahead and take off the back. So I figured you know how to put your adhesive on, so you don't want to sit through that with me. I remove that, and I removed the tape from the center. Now, apparently tonight I'm having a little issue with cutting, and it's me, not my cutter. So while I was taping, I noticed I did get a little off here, and then I was a little off there at the top. But that is why we keep our borders. And they are lifesavers many times. for this very reason. When we aren't cutting perfectly straight, or we've made boo-boos, which happens a lot, but that's the nice thing with paper crafts. You can make that boo-boo, and the only person that's going to know is you. So I have saved all these pieces that we cut off, and I will be going around and I will be putting them on. Now where that red meets, I'm going to cut the red off so that the dots meet, and it looks like now we have the border back on. And nobody but whoever watched this video will be the wiser. And I'll be doing that towards the end. Excuse me. And there is nothing that you can't save when paper crafting, and especially when you are using papers like Graphic 45, you know, that I consider them an investment. You want to be able to save your errors, but you don't want anybody to really know. And this is where, see, I'm having trouble seeing. There we go. And again, I sometimes will pull back on the paper too quick as I'm going through the cutter, but once I put my little border pieces back on, then that will match up even better, because then I just angle it a little bit. Nobody knows the difference, and everything is now fixed. So our other stripe is going there, and I did have 3 of my grandkids that are all under 6 today, so my brain is a little off. Now for the inside. And again, I only did the 3 sides. And when you're doing smaller pockets like this, it is easy, pretty easy. So I just use the score tape because I'm not having to go down too deep. Now I'm going to just use the flat side or my finger and just go around that magnet. Now on this one, you'll see I put score tape on all 4 sides. Did not mean to, and that's okay, but I'm not going to use them. I'm going to actually just leave that piece of score tape on. You don't have to. You can, if you put it on, you can take it off. This one gives me a little trouble because of my way I have to work. Okay, now there we go. There's the inside. So when we open it, we'll have pretty much the whole scene, and I will lay out my pieces when I come back through and just clean up those borders so that no errors, and then I'll make the little tags that go in the pocket, and they'll just sit right inside. Now for the outside, I had covered the outside in the green. So let me find that green piece. And again, this is a piece that you may not want to cut. It is the back side of this one. So if you don't want to cut it, I totally understand. But here's the thing. When cutting this one, because we don't have to worry about the orientation, so I'm going to basically cut in half and probably use this bottom because I want this book part and I want those stamps. Like I said, if you're not comfortable, then yeah, definitely don't. But I already cut one of these, so let me find that piece. buried over here already. I had cut the border off, so I'm going to go ahead and measure and make sure I cut 4.5 by the 7.5. So I'm just going to cut that right in half, basically. Oh, I am going to take the 1/8 of an inch off. Sometimes I wish they really wouldn't put the tags in pockets like that, because it's so, sometimes it's, you have to decide, do I want the tags or do I want this piece? Now we're going to cut 3.5, take off the 1/8 of an inch. And you might go into that book piece, but you should have 2 of these. Or you might want to choose a different pattern to cut. There is the green, and we want to line those up so that they match pretty much. Like it. Now, I won't go ahead and take up the time, but because I'll go back and do it, you need to go ahead and ink your edges, score tape, and then you'll go ahead and put it down. What I'm going to do is just put my paper clip here so that I know to come back and we can keep going. But now you can go ahead and put your score tape down or adhesive. You can mat that page and we'll move on. So our next page is the pockets. So it's going to be this one. You have the pockets. You have an inside pocket that we made, and then we're going to mat that. And then we have the top fold and bottom fold, and then the large size pocket. And for this one, I used the stripes and then this pattern paper, which I believe is, it's the back of this page. So you might want to choose a different one, but that was what this bottom is. And then the back side was the blue snowflakes. And actually we've got, ours is just a little different. We didn't have that on the, we'll put these on the back, but we're going to do this page also. So we'll get those all ready and we'll get our papers cut. I debated on finishing this whole album under decorating, but then I had some ladies that did message me, and I hope this isn't everybody, but they're like, we're okay now, we can go ahead and decorate. But I want to show you a couple of things, and what we're going to do then is we've already decorated those first 2 pages. I'm going to show you how to put them in the book. We're going to make this, and I'll just go through a couple more things. So how we matted these pages, that is how I continue just going on down and matting my pages. Now if you are wanting to do it exactly like this book, then you can follow and stop the other video, or I do have the pictures available on Facebook, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And then when you add your little touches, everybody will have their own little style. Now these were just, you know, cutouts, things you back. Your magnets are already down. So all you have to do now is mat. It's very simple. Cut off your 1/8 of a sheet. There was nothing extra or that's just a cutout or different. That was done. So when you get to this back page, that was the same thing. Now I just cut photo mats out of the green paper to the size that I wanted and added the few elements, chipboard elements, and then of course made your text. And did the same, move my mouse, did the same for here. Now this was the cutout, cut apart. You just want to back it on your cardstock. Now if you are having any trouble during the decorating phase, don't hesitate to leave me a message, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. But you can see now, just from doing those first couple of pages, how simple it is to mat. And I'm sure most of you have that pretty much down. And when I do my covers, I do the same thing. I just mat them with 1/8 of an inch shorter all the way around. So for these pockets, because they were a little different than the original album, this is where I'm going to use my 6x6. So I want to show you. So I also decided I didn't want to cut apart any more of my main pages because I don't have a lot of that left in my personal stash. So I'm going to use my 6x6 here on these pockets. I'll put that inside, and I'll probably choose, and these are really pretty. So you've got little different variations of some of your patterns, and I'll pick a stripe so it'll be similar. And you'll just go ahead and decorate. Now, one thing I want to, if you've got your envelope punch board and you're familiar with it, then you're going to just make your probably a 3x5 envelope to go here and here. So what I want to do now is go to the book, and I'm going to go ahead and insert these first 2 pages. Make sure it's the right way. So when I get, going, I will come back and start decorating. It's up to you. You can either start from the back or start from the front. I usually do start from the back, but you don't have to. That's not a, a hard rule, but I always decorate first because I like a nice flat surface. If it's on the hinges when decorating, it kind of makes it hard to really line things up. What I do first is I take my page and I do put it on, and I just look to see how we're going to fit. Now, if you did the hinges exactly like I did, you'll notice how nice it fits on. There's no sliding back and forth, so you won't have to worry about one page being higher or lower than the other. Now we're going to go ahead and take off the score tape. And it is nerve-wracking when you're first doing this, so sometimes I'll even open my whole page. I'll turn my book so that it's facing towards me, however you're most comfortable. But when you do your hinges, just about 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch shorter in length than your page, they should fit on very nicely. So now I'm not going to push anything down because I need to be able to, manipulate it, and sometimes you can. I want to look and see how is it going to lay down. How's it going to lay down back here? And actually now I'm going to push against the hinges, and I'm going to push this down. The reason I'm doing that, do you see how that made that lay nice and flat? And then I'm going to go to this side. You want it to, I literally push it, and it just, for some reason, it works well. So that was our first one, which was our pocket. And if you remember, it was shorter. And we had gotten here, but I didn't patch those down, so I'm going to set that aside. And now this one is a little bit thicker because we've got a lot more substance here. And then we don't have an opening here. So really, I always like to look things over and make sure I'm putting them on correctly. Once again, I'm just going to set this down on my hinge, and it should slide beautifully. This is going to be shorter anyway, but I'm going to put it there and make sure. Now, do you see how even those are? And I don't have to try and move it down, move it up. It's just there. So I'm going to remove it. And even though I don't have this matted, I have the majority of it. And so it will be easy just to mat that. But it's a little bit harder to mat the inside if you're already on your hinges. But if you're comfortable, go ahead before you mat your pages. And another thing is, if you remember how when I was doing this, I made some errors, but I'm going to fix them. If I had totally ruined this page and say I didn't want to use it at all and I just needed to make another one and it's already down, guess what? You're stuck. You're going to have to figure it out. That's why I don't like to decorate my pages until, I don't like to put them on the hinges till they're decorated. Now once again, now remember, don't go all the way down, because if you have flaps and things to open, you need room. But that's why we have a little bit bigger of a gusset. I'm going to look on both sides, lay it back, and I'm going to go against my hinges, and I'm going to push there. I'm going to open, because we have layers. We have layers here, and we have layers there. Now when you have your book over, do you see how nice it lays flat? Lays great. You don't have to do anything extra. Now remember, this was, in some you'll see that you measure, you do a 1/4 inch. I do, that's why I did bigger than the 1/4 of an inch, because you want this room. You want to be able to have plenty of room in between your pages. So that's how we do the inside of the book. Now after I get all of these pages in or decorated, I will put them in the same way. So let's go ahead and let's make this. This one was just at a craft fair, that's why the tag's on there. We're gonna make this piece. So you're going to need a piece of your, what, you know, you should, oh, wrong color. You should have some left. Let me get in my scrap pile here. All right, those aren't big enough. I'm going to have to just cut a piece. This isn't any particular size. This one I just cut is almost 2 1/4. The choice is yours. You might want it to be a little bit thicker. I'm thinking I will go just a hair thicker or wider. Well, that didn't go any wider, did it? There we go. So I'm going to go 2 3/4. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of look at it, because I want it to be somewhat rounded there, so we have room. And then what I'm going to do is, you want plenty of room back here, because you're going to mat on top. So once I get it there, I'm just going to make a quick mark to remind, whoops, wrong thing, to remind myself that's where that's going to go. I'm going to look around to the front. Now the thing with the front, you want to make sure you have plenty of room for expansion when your book expands. So I just kind of lift my book up, because I figure there's going to be some pictures, we're going to want some expansion, and then I get it to where I think it looks good. And then I will cut it. Now I don't want to put this completely down yet until I totally mat it. It goes this way. Okay. Now one thing you're going to do is, I'm going to use the large, and they're stuck there, basic gray magnets. And I'm going to go ahead and use 2. You don't have to. Get rid of those small ones. But I want to make sure that if this book is full, remove this, then we're going to have lots of stronghold. So I'm just going to kind of guesstimate. Keeping it far enough away that I know paper will be able to be hidden. These big ones are a little tricky sometimes. Looks good. Now I'm going to actually take those off, and I am going to put score tape on the top. Only because the adhesive on there isn't that great. I'm going to be honest with you on these magnets. So, looking back to where we had it, small piece to hold it. Remember, you want to be lifting up on your book just a hair so you can get an idea of exactly. That looks like it's not going to work. That's why we also cut extra on the back, because I'm going to need more in the front. Okay, I'm lifting my book up, see? So it's pushing this a little bit. It's like I am going to have to move this up even closer. See, we started there, which is great because I knew it gave me that extra. Now I need to make sure I don't go any further than about that inch because it's got to be underneath. And that actually looks a lot better. Because I don't want my magnets too close to the edge, so we're going to, oops, hold that straight. And one reason I'm doing it this way is when I cover it, when I mat it, trust me, you don't want it attached to the book, or you won't get your matting underneath here, and you'll see it. So once again, I'm going to leave it straight as possible. I'm going to lift the book up. See, I'm lifting the cover up because remember, it's going to get fat with pictures, journaling. And lay that right down. Make sure it's good and straight. This is where hopefully your magnets will hold. If not, you'll have to get the score tape. Pull it to this. No. All right, we're going to go to the score tape. It's the only thing I wish they would put a stronger adhesive. So we'll just go to the good old score tape. Holding my book cover open a little bit, but making sure I'm far enough away from that edge. And I'm pulling backwards. Score tape the top, and there you'll have a nice closure that will hold it nice and shut. Now you should be able to, and you know, if you're not using a paper that's, well, Cartabel is the only one I know I've ever been able to take score tape off of, then you're going to want to go ahead and just maybe use Scotch tape. Now this is where you can go ahead now, cut your papers, and you'll cut them just that 1/8 of an inch again. You'll mount the front or the inside, and then you'll mount the back. After you mount it, I put it down, and then you can go ahead and adhere, and now you can attach this more permanent, and then you'll go ahead and make your covers and mat and then decorate your covers, and you are all set to go. So if you have any questions on any part of putting your book together from here, please leave me a message, and I hope you have fun decorating, and I hope you have fun with next month's project because it's a really cool one. Thanks for watching.